Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am a certified functional medicine practitioner practicing right here in Boca Raton, Florida, and I help people that are suffering with chronic conditions get their life back. If you're watching this video, then today I want to talk to you about food sensitivities. I cannot tell you how many times I see a patient that has an autoimmune condition, and most patients that come into my office are considered autoimmune until proven otherwise, because autoimmunity is more rampant in 2015 than any other time in history. In fact, the CDC has even stopped counting because the incidence is just going through the roof. And why isn't it? Because there's so much environmental toxins from the foods that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, pesticides, chemicals, GMOs, modified foods, hybrid foods, pesticides, heavy metals, mercury amalgams, viruses, molds, fungus, all parasites, all of these things in the environment is dysregulating the immune system. And what happens ultimately, it creates a leakiness in the gut. And if you think about a fine metal strainer that is responsible for sifting or draining a bowl of pasta, which you shouldn't be eating because it's gluten, then what happens is the water falls through and the pasta stays there. But over time, the inflammation or the use of the strainer creates broken springs or broken coils or mesh, and next thing you know, you have a colander, and not only is the water falling through, but so is the food that it's supposed to be draining. That's what leaky gut is. And so there is a wonderful, wonderful test that you can test to determine if you have any leakiness of your gut or intestinal permeability. We are using a lab called Cyrex Array number 2, Cyrex Labs, you can look at that. And Cyrex Array number 2, what it does basically is it tests your blood to determine if you have any antibodies to the cell lining or the wall that holds the mucous membranes together. And what happens is if you do have antibodies that have been developed in your immune system, then you are starting to attack these peptides or these protein structures, and that's creating that leakiness of the gut. So we do a test. In this particular case, this patient had a bunch of positive findings, and she was dealing with a Hashimoto's problem. And the endocrinologist unfortunately said that you don't have celiac, so you mustn't be reacting to gluten, and that's a false conclusion. You don't necessarily have to have a gluten sensitivity to create celiacs. All celiacs are going to be gluten sensitive, but just because you're gluten sensitive doesn't mean it's going to develop into a celiac problem. It could develop into a Hashimoto's problem, or a Crohn's problem, or a fibromyalgia problem, or an insomnia problem, or a rheumatoid or psoriatic arthritis problem, or psoriasis, or gout, or ALS, or MS, or lupus. All of these things are typically predisposed because of the gut breakdown and the leakiness of the gut. So she was confused. She was never told she had leakiness of her gut. But that leads me into my next phase, is now that we have leakiness into your gut, what happens is you eat these inflammatory proteins like gluten, dairy, egg, corn, soy, rice, quinoa, what else? Potato. All of these peptides could create a reaction in your body. So now every time you eat them, because of the permeability in your gut, the immune system is reacting against that, creating these antibodies. And now these antibodies circulate, and they're very, very vigilant, hypervigilant, and they go and attack the thyroid. And if you have a thyroid problem, or you have difficulty losing weight, or you have brain fog, or you have gastrointestinal problems, or you're cold all the time, and you're not feeling happy, and you just don't have the energy, and you've never been told that you have potentially a reaction to food, then you've been mismanaged, in my opinion. The other thing I'd like to say is that I see a lot of patients that come into my office and say, you know what, doctor, I already had the skin fold allergy test and I was normal, I was negative. What I would tell you is great. You don't have an anaphylactic reaction, or you don't have an IgE immediate allergy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't reacting from an intolerant point of view. So it's not necessarily an allergy per se, but it's an intolerance or a sensitivity to, and it creates an immune response the same way, but with different cells or different immune cells, and that can create immune reactions, inflammation, and autoimmunity. So just because you had an immune test that tested your skin and you didn't have an allergy doesn't mean you don't have an intolerance or a food sensitivity. And B, most of the time, the test that they are doing is so incomplete. As an example, there are 24 different types of peptides, gluten structures, and typically I'll have a patient, she's an autoimmune patient, I saw, and she said, you know, I already had the test and I reacted normal, I didn't have any problems. Her problem was they only reacted against IgA wheat, and then deaminated gliadin as well. There were 22 other peptide structures that she could have possibly reacted to, and she did. I told her, go get this test done, and I'll tell you if you're reacting or not. And she really was, and so she was a little bit upset. The last thing I would say is we do a cross-reactive test. So let's say you're doing a great job, you're gluten-free, you're going to the gluten-free section of the grocery store, and you're drinking gluten-free, well, not so much drinking, but you're eating gluten-free pasta, you're eating gluten-free bread, you're eating gluten-free crackers. But if you look on the ingredient, you'll see that there is corn flour, or there's potato flour, or there's quinoa, or amaranth, or spelt, or tapioca. And all of these things, you're doing a good job avoiding the gluten, but meanwhile, because you have so much leakiness of your gut, you are reacting to other peptides that you had no idea. As an example, this person here reacted to sesame, hemp, and teff. And she didn't even realize what those things are, but a lot of these foods or these grains are in gluten-free section. So my advice to you is get Cyrex labs done because it's the best lab in the world. It's the lab we use. If you don't use me, use someone that does Cyrex. Number two, get an intestinal permeability screen, which is a leakiness of your gut. Get a gluten test that's complete with all 24 peptides that you could possibly be reacting to. And then get the cross-reactive test in the very least, because here you are doing a very, very vigilant, disciplined dietary intake. But meanwhile, you're taking 2 steps backwards with every time you eat the gluten-free bread because you're reacting to it. So just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's reactive-free. And that's a big, big light bulb that should go off in your head and wonder, yeah, maybe that's why I'm still suffering. And so if you like what we heard, then you can find out more information on the link below. It will go onto my website and give you a lot of information. If you also like the video, please give it a thumbs up, a comment, or a share, because that does a lot of help for us to be able to help the community. And I look forward to helping you in any way I can. And if you're suffering with a chronic condition and you're looking for a new solution, then potentially functional medicine and food sensitivity is the way to go. I look forward to helping you further. Thank you so much.